Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Welcome back to the online course Structure, Form and Architecture, the Synergy. This is lecture number 2, Relationship of Structure to Architectural Buildings. In lecture number 1, we just started with the introduction, where we learnt about different aspects of structural form and its synergy with architecture. And we have seen not only in nature, but also in man-made world, we have a strong association with the structural form and architectural design. So, in this lecture, basically this topic is being divided into two lecture 2 and lecture 3. So, in lecture 2 we will try to understand in detail the relationship of structure with the architectural building. Now, again we just refresh our mind with the definition, as I already mentioned that the definition of structure or building or architecture will get different kind of definitions from different sources, but to understand in pertinent to the building and architectural design, we just put it like this: the structure is the part of building that resists the load that imposed on it. It is very clear and straightforward answer that suppose a building is structurally built very strong, that means the load, the external load or the other dead load or live load, we will talk about those different kind of loads in upcoming lectures, but basically we all understand what is load. So, it is the force on that particular surface or the object. So, it should have that capacity to resist it from collapse. So, the part of a building that resists the load is basically the structural element, and altogether when they actually put in a right manner, that composition of that element will make the structure of the building. Now, what is building? Now, we learned the definition of architecture, where it was said the articulation of space with the help of your the application of technology, different science into it. Now, let us see the definition of building. It is an envelope that encloses and subdivides space in order to create protected environment. Already I mentioned in lecture number 1, where like in the primitive age people they start building because of they had to protect themselves from the external dangers. It may be from the weather, it may be from the other animals. So, this safety, the protection was the need to make something called shelter, and this is an envelope that we normally name as building. But in a building it may be a single like lecture room, like the room now I am standing on it, and it may be like a series of rooms put together to fulfill our need. Say for example, if we take example of a residential building. So, we have bedroom, we have drawing room, we have like toilet, then kitchen area. So, basically it is something the division of space for as per our requirement. Now, in this particular lecture we will try to see the close relationship of structural application to the building. Now, to start with, this is a very schematic diagram in this slide, where it is just a you can say the under construction building. So, here different components of a building structures been shown. So, it start with the foundation that we have seen, like it is the anchor, like the tree they have the roots to hold it, the canopy and the branches, like that for a building. So, we need foundation, and that should anchor like this will anchor the whole building with the ground, so that it can stand safely. Then also it consists of some vertical structure and some horizontal structure. So, vertical means based on its position, so we can say wall, column, etc. And then also to support it like a frame structure, then we also need to put beam adequately to connect them. And then to have this space usable, so we have to create different slab. Now, composition of all these like beam, wall, slab and foundation, they will make the skeleton. Like in the previous lecture I have shown like one image with a human skeleton and the outer surface. So, like that what we see in the building, this is basically the final outcome, but before that, inside that there are like bone like skeleton which will be like saving the building, which will make it safe, will protect the building. Now, the main fundamental is that whatever the load come on these elements like slab will then transfer the load to the beam will transfer to the column, and finally, it will transfer the load to the foundation, and foundation will transfer the load to the ground. So, that is the whole mechanism. We will come into detail when we discuss about different kind of loads and how they act to the building. But whatever I mentioned in this slide, this is very basic, like very simple straightforward building, where it is just we can say the apartment building, a very simple design and concept. And looking into the picture, we hardly get any idea about the material to be used for that, or the other functions. So, basically the moment we make it little bit complex, like we play with the different concept, different requirement, sometimes we need a convention hall where we cannot put a column in between, we have to make it obstruction free, then probably the structural composition will change. So, that is why we can say that whatever the component of a structure, or maybe the parts and parcel of that, it will vary to from simple to the complex structure. So, let us understand this with some other slide. So, in this slide we I just presented one igloo and the other is teepee. So, the right hand side picture, the teepee is basically a temporary structures. You can see that this is a cloth like membrane material, which we can put on a structure temporarily made with some wooden stick, which is make it stable, a conical structure. So, that can be a replacement of a tent. So, the arrangement is very simple and we can easily make it. The other one, the igloo, it is again a compressive structure. So, here we will put the compressed ice and make this form, which will protect like the people who are residing inside it. Now, just as I mentioned the compressive structure, compressive means if you compress any object, say for example, I have this pen, right. So, here if I want just give pressure from both the end, so what is happening inside it? So, it try to compress, but as because I cannot put enough pressure on this from both the side, so the change is not visible to you. But if we perform it with some higher load, then definitely it will collapse after certain time. So, there are structure like which are tensile in nature and all. So, the other side, this particular structure, conical structure is well formed and it is protected people for the weather and all. The concept behind these two is basically the basic purpose to protect from the external environment. Maybe it is the extreme cold weather, or it may be a scorching summer. And as of now, these two are very simple to construct. Now, come to a recent one, like this is Burj Al Arab in Dubai. This is really a good architecture, and like whenever we see this image or in any video that is showing this building, we really appreciate it and we really want to know more about it from the source. But if you see the structure that I have shown beside that image, so it is not that simple that we have seen for the igloo and all. So, here it accounts more than that. More than that, I want to mean that it's act with a compressive load, the tensile load. Along with that, there are other several loads that this building should resist. One of that is basically the wind. If you see the location of this, so basically wind will play a crucial role, and if you see the height of the building, so at that height also there will be a pressure, wind pressure and all. So, then the structural composition will be different. So, then that should take care of the wind load and other lateral pressure, and that is why it is being complexed. So, along with a simple beam column structure, now it need more than that. Now, what about this? This is a new Beijing airport in China, which will be which is considered to be the largest airport in the world. So, see this is under construction photograph. So, looking at this is nowhere matching with the basic concept of the beam column and other structural element, is so complex, but it is possible, and as because it is possible, you can see the image is still see those different curvature and all, and here if you see that not only at the roof, so they play with different curvature at different axes. So, it is basically creating that particular environment, that particular enclosure with some flow. So, in order to make it happen, so we have to design the structure accordingly. Now, we have two way. One, we restrict ourselves with a very straightforward composition and compromise our concept, we cannot go beyond that, but this is the time where we should go what we want, and we support it with different structural advancement, and we apply the technology to make it happen. So, this is the repeat slide that already I presented in my last lecture number 1, but just have a recap to it. So, in this process we create the space, we articulate the space as per our need, we subdivide the space as per our requirement, and definitely there we put our idea. So, this is very important here, the idea, and then the technology, definitely the new technology will help us to make it more desirable, and the control on the quality, and we have to fulfill the requirements. So, these are very key parameters which with which will go forward, and these are the key points where also we mentioned about the concept. So, the moment we get a requirement that we need this much of space, this type of space, then we start generating different concept, how we can make it purposeful, how we can make it different from existing one, so that it will make a contrast to the existing buildings and all will appreciate. So, to bring that wow factor into our building, so we should really play hard in concept stage, and then definitely the other points to be maintained, where we should also look into the space available, the resource available, technology available, the materials, another important thing which will change many decision. Even sometimes because of the materials we cannot select a structure, because the material is not available at that particular site or location. Then the execution. So, when we execute well, then that will give the result that we actually want. So, before we move to the next slide, let us understand the simplicity and complexity. So, you all can see that I have a paper, plain paper, piece of paper, and this is very simple, right. I can use it for writing something, or if I fold it, So, I can make aeroplane out of it. So, with the plain concept, plain blank paper, we can create many things, but just think about the structural point of view. So, if I try to hold this paper, it is not possible, okay, because of the self weight and all, but I just fold it. Now, it is standing, right. So, this type of structure we will discuss in that particular section when we discuss about different type of structure that we can use in our architectural field. So, this is folded plate, and if you make it like that, trial and error, you can get something like that. So, here it is a letter, you can say M or W, but you know, frankly speaking, it can also carry a load. Suppose this paper, if I want to put this charger like the changer, slide changer, it cannot hold the load. I am scared that it may fall, but with this it may act as a stand without any external support. So, this is the beauty, like with a plain paper, with a plain kind of slab, to convert it to the you know, folded plate slab can, you know, solve many purpose. So, we will discuss in detail. So, let us move on to the next slide. So, in this lecture we primarily focus on the concept. So, what Pressman says about the concept? Concept refers to the essential formative scheme, idea or basic organizing principle of a building design. A strong initial idea is valuable because that will be implemented, that requires the cost, that requires the other energy, manpower, everything. So, that is very vital, thereby ensuring coherence among the all elements. Like all elements means the space available, the structure to be used, everything is related with the concept. So, for that, based on a book authored by Charles Son, that structure as architecture. So, concept and structure has a relation, and broadly we can classify that concept in 4 pairs. So, one is order versus chaos, stability versus instability, static versus dynamic, grounded versus floating. So, looking at the terms, we can get some idea, okay, what exactly they mean. So, when you call something in order, so everything is order. So, that means it is very simple, straightforward. Where it chaos is scramble, like this is something I draw. It may be an abstract art, but it is creating a chaos, where I just make this arrangement. So, we can say that they are in order and they are making like you know, 3 column 2 row composition array. The stability and instability, stability means, say for example, this is a you know, elevation from a site of a pyramid, and if you just, this is the ground. So, we can say that this structure, this form is very stable, whereas if I make it inverted, so it assumed to be very much unstable, but that is not the challenge, because also like we can make it happen. There are buildings which is having. Static means is very straightforward, where we have a composition like this, and dynamic relate to the flow, which will change or give a motion when you look into the building. So, we will have some curvature and other thing. Then grounded and floating. Grounded means it has a feeling that it is anchored with the ground, whereas floating means it seems to be floated, but exactly it is not the real case, but visually we will see. Suppose a building which is having a mass heavier, and you know, it is just stand on a very simple, you know, and very narrow structural element below. So, this is seems to be floating. So, this is overall idea that we can say. So, let us just understand through different case study. So, this is again a nice example given in the book Structure as Architecture. So, here the the concept of making architecture like from your order to chaos, how it is going to change. So, in this this is the plan where you can say that these dots are all column and they are placed in order. So, creating a very order form architecture, and then when you start rotating it to the B, so it is moving to the chaos, and finally, when you make it very random, then it is making this picture, right. So, this is the conceptual image. Now, we will get this one. So, this is another example of order, which is Parthenon from history Athens. So, if you see in the plan, so external and internal columns, they are placed in order, and finally, this is the outcome, okay, where all vertical columns are placed in order with a equal distance, and also it is giving a feeling of order, and we appreciate it. So, this type of building. So, this is one example from the history. So, let us get some more example, and this is from India, our Parliament House. So, here the corridor and these columns, okay, the earlier was like that order form we got in a rectangular form, but here we are getting it for the oval form. So, in this corridor the vertical they are placed in order and creating another aesthetic. So, we appreciate this kind of structure not only in Parliament building, there are many such buildings where we have this kind of columns placed in a elliptical form or in a circular form. So, this is another example of order. Now, let us move to the chaos, and here like before I say anything, looking into picture you can understand the chaos. So, basically if you see, this is the Bird Nest Olympic Stadium in Beijing, China. So, in this this is another fantastic creation where the concept is been taken from the nature, the bird nest, and the members are placed randomly, not in particular order. So, it create some chaos, but overall outcome definitely we appreciate. So, it is not only like we should always create our architecture or design in order, but sometimes perfect execution of chaos will also create some great experience. This is another example where this is Royal Ontario Museum. So, here you can see that none of the surface are very straightforward or in order. So, in from external it is something like looking at like some concept who are pursuing architects, they must have heard about deconstructionism. So, it is a deconstruction concept has been played and surfaces are just tangled with each other, and this is from the interior. Even interior we cannot get a smooth surface, not smooth in sense of the material. I say that when you just move your eyes through those lines, so it is creating some chaos. So, this is another piece of architectural example where structure are made in such manner which is creating chaos. The basic concept was to make it like this and the structure that support it, and final result that we all see in this picture. Now, move to the next concept, that is the stability and instability versus in this stability, it is not basically in point of the structural stability. Okay. So, let us clear this stability is basically visual stability. So, looking at the building we will say it is showing the stability or it is not showing the stability, because a building looking unstable in this aspect will not mean that structure is very poor and it may fall any time. So, in this visual stability, if you see again this is the picture from the same book, the reference is given here. So, here if you see that it is a proper arrangement in order. So, external columns and internal columns, and they make it very stable form. Now, if you move through this A, B, C and D, in D where these are placed, these are not regular column, these are some other members, columns are placed in a slant. So, basically if we just try to draw, so this is one slab and this is another slab, we can connect it with this state column, and in the unstable form that we create intentionally something like that, where we will feel that this particular column may fall. So, it is showing a visual instability to it. So, let us clear this idea with some of examples. This is the law codes in Vancouver. The structure is very massive, okay. But still as because we have this concrete support where you can see those space frame are being supported, here also you can see this supported. So, while walking while walking with this space, you will feel a stability that this whole roof will not fall over you. So, you feel very secure and then you can say this structure is made very stable. So, space frame roof supported by concrete frames conveying a sense of stability. Okay, so, it is stable, structurally stable, and visually also we feel it very stable. But if you remove this and it is having just some slant random members, so probably will be scared. This is one example of another in the category of stability. From history example, the Parthenon, the Pantheon in Rome. So, here you see that huge domical structure as a roof, but this place feels very secure because of those members. So, if you see that the whole domical structure being placed over different wall component and the column, so that this give a sense for stability. Now, move on to the instability. Forum Barcelona solar plant, looking at the structure itself, it is looking very dangerous, but structurally it is strong, stable, but visually it is looking very unstable because of some of irregular piers support this whole pergola is being placed. So, if you stand here and look into this structure, probably you will feel it very unstable. Take this example, the reactor. You can also search of this building which is being created by two artists, and this is a experience balancing self weight. So, this is having a pivot point. So, these two people moving from different place and all, it will have this inclination and all. So, it is a perfect example of visual instability of a building, but again this is a stable structure. So, structure is made accordingly. So, along the concept it is made. Now, move to the third concept, that is static versus dynamic. Static means we will not have any flow. So, here also it is a regular arrangement of a column, pairwise column. So, it is giving a static sense, whereas you placed it in order or you just change the scale from small or something like that, or maybe you create something in dynamic in order. So, it create a visual dynamism in your architectural form. So, again let us clear with some of the example. So, this is one example of a hotel Hyatt Regency from Kolkata. Here the structure says is very straightforward and static. So, horizontal and vertical combination to that, and it is giving a very static image when you look into this. Move to the next example, this is from IIM Ahmedabad. So, here also the heavy structure, the exposed brickwork, then very straight form is giving a sense of staticness. Even the inside, like it is a series of semicircular arch, it is also creating a very static environment. Now, come to dynamic. This is a building designed by Zaha Hadid. So, here you can see that the building is creating a flow. So, everywhere if you see that it is showing a wave or even it is clear in this picture. So, it is not very static. So, basically if you look into this building, your eye will actually take that route or make this transition. So, this is another nice example where it is showing the visual dynamism of the building, and this is being supported with that particular type of structure. So, it is not straightforward beam column structure. So, for that we need different kind of structural element, and that is why this subject is important to know, because if we do not have the knowledge of the structure that can make this or which kind of structure is really fruitful to that, then probably we cannot create this kind of dynamic architecture. So, take another example of dynamic architecture. This is Madrid airport, where this is the terminal building, where the roof structure again creating a flow and creating a dynamic sense everywhere. Though the structure is very light, and it has to be light because if you see that this span is quite huge, we cannot have more obstruction. So, again this structure is giving a sense of dynamic visual dynamism to the building, and the structure being made with that, with the proper roofing and the lightweight structure at the roof supported by the adequate structural members. And this is the the fourth one and the last component under the concept category. So, here if you see the grounded, that means if you see this part, this is dotted the foundation, and the superstructure, it is something like that. It is having a connection straightway with the ground. So, it may be a portal, but when we talk about the floating, so the reduction in the surface at the bottom to the ground, it is creating a sense of floating. Here also the I have already drawn this kind of picture where it is the heavy mass is standing on a shallow structural member, and sometimes also you can have these lead rubber bearings where this kind of structure we use for the earthquake prone area, where base isolation technique or something of that nature being used to make your building protected. So, these are the concepts. So, let us clear our concept with some of the things. So, here the building is again a curve, but the interesting part is that it is grounded at different discrete place. So, that we can see that it is anchored. So, otherwise it may flow out or something. So, this is perfectly grounded. This is the Rolex Learning Center in Switzerland. Now, this example is a very famous example in the field of architecture, the glass house. So, here it is the placed very simplistic architecture with glass and the other transparent material, and it is perfectly grounded to the lawn. So, this is another example of grounded visually grounded architecture. Now, come to the floating. This is gas natural headquarters in Barcelona. If you see this particular cantilever, okay, normally in a building we have some cantilever 1 meter, 1.5 meter, and in some special building we have 2 to 3 meter, and then we are very scared that how to make it may collapse or something without any support. But this is being created, and visually building is stable, definitely that was taken care of, but this heavy mass with a shallow vertical structure create a sense of floating. So, that is the overall idea to pick up this example. So, this is giving a visual sense that this heavy mass, this particular wing of the building is floating. Now, move to the next one. So, this is similar to the glass house building, but here the difference, as we can see from the concept, we have seen somewhere if you reduce the connection with the ground of the superstructure, that is also giving a sense of floating. Here you can easily see those gaps. So, this is your ground level and there is a enough gap to it. So, this building with this minimal support with the narrow columns, it is showing a sense of floating. So, this is the example of floating. So, all these examples we have seen that is basically the concept. So, concept was created to make it dynamic and as per that accordingly like one has to select that appropriate structure that can fulfill that concept. So, if you summarize this particular lecture, so synergy between forms and structural element is essential to bring the concepts into real world architecture. So, as already I mentioned, if we dream of something to be very dynamic, having large span, having very lightweight structure, so we have to select the suitable structure for it. If we go very traditionally conventional manner with a very limited structural form, very straightforward beam column, so maybe many of our concept will be compromised. Then concept of architectural design to be supported with appropriate structural form that I already mentioned, and in order to achieve that one has to know the type of structure to be used, and in order to make that structure we also should know the material to be selected for making this structure, because each material will have different property in terms of resistance, strength. So, we should also have clear idea, and that is why in the whole course we will have some lectures on materials. So, different kind of materials that will give a visual look is one area, but also considering the structure and strength. So, that has different property. So, when you see a building, okay, so we see the building material, we see different components of the building, door, windows, etc. So, like that each components of a structure, like though it is material or the form or different property, we will discuss in detail in coming lectures. And these are the further reading. Already I have mentioned these are few important books you can go through and you get more examples. The next lecture we will discuss in lecture 3 the part 2 of this, where we will discuss about the different architectural qualities and the supporting structure relationship. Thank you for taking part in this.